Across back roads and forgotten towns, the past lives on. Not in textbooks, but in weathered plaques, quiet museums, and the stories we nearly lost. I'm Pelham Pugh, and this is American Shadows, uncovering the people, places, and relics that shaped our American history. Warm Springs, Georgia, a quiet place nestled among pines and healing springs. Here stood Franklin Delano Roosevelt's retreat, the Little White House, a place not of ceremony, but of refuge. Between 1924 and 1945, FDR came here again and again, drawn by warmth and water and people. It was here, at a modest desk inside this small cottage, that he worked, breathed, and grappled with both his illness and the burdens of leadership. On April 12, 1945, the weight of that burden brought him to his final hours in his very house. A moment recorded in history and in a letter no outsider has heard until now. This is American Shadows, the Little White House. Today, the Little White House stands as much as it did in 1945. A small, white, clapboard cottage, modest in design, but heavy with history. 3 rooms, simple furnishings, and the silence of a place where the weight of a nation once rested. Inside, Roosevelt's desk remains just as he left it, the unfinished pages of a speech resting where his pen fell. A speech meant to guide a nation through the close of World War II, never delivered. Here in this bedroom, Roosevelt spent his last moments. Preserved now, just as it was on that April day in 1945. Today, visitors walk these paths not to meet a president, but to meet the memory of a man who carried the nation through depression and war, only to find his final peace in this small southern town. The Little White House is more than a museum. It is a reminder that history is not only written in great halls and marble monuments, but also in simple cottages, where leaders face their last day as men. This painting was being completed when Roosevelt collapsed. The brushstrokes froze in time. The president, mid-sentence, forever unfinished. On the day President Roosevelt died here at the Little White House, one of the people nearby took pen to paper. Her letter, saved by family, captures the shock and sorrow of that moment in ways no headline ever could. With their gracious permission, I'm able to share it with you now for the very first time. The letter describes a minstrel show that took place here, including the use of blackface, something we recognize today as deeply offensive. But it was part of the culture at Warm Springs in 1945, and leaving it out would erase an uncomfortable truth about that era. Warm Springs, Georgia, April 15th, 1945. Dear Mother and Daddy, it is hard to know just how to start a letter like this. There's so much to tell. I'm going to attempt to type 5 copies at once. The President arrived here Friday, March 30th at 1:30 p.m. We met him at the train. His party was quite large. Secretaries, Secret Service men, 2 cousins, and a sister. His cousin's Miss Delano's dog, Mr. McCarthy, Dr. Bruin, George Fox, and many others that we in the Foundation have come to know in the President's many trips here. Mr. Roosevelt greeted us with a wave from his seat on the train, and then was immediately wheeled onto the observation platform and lowered to the ground on a tiny elevator. Knight Riley, the handsome blue-eyed head of the Secret Service, wheeled him to his blue Ford, which bears the license tag FDR 1. 2 Secret Servicemen lifted him into the car. The top was down, and this time he did not drive to the Little White House. Mr. Fredericks of the Secret Service, since Taft's administration, drove him. As has always been the custom on each of his many trips to the Foundation, The entire presidential party drove through the circle at Georgia Hall. All the patients, both wheelchairs and stretchers, were there to greet him. He was dressed in a navy blue suit and wore a hat. He looked very tired, but not as bad as he did when he came in November. His entire stay here this trip was spent at the Little White House, resting. He saw practically no one except his secretaries and the 2 cousins with him. I believe his old friend, McCarthy, was there twice. He did not even go to the swimming pool, which he had always enjoyed so much, and did not drive his car, although he went for several long rides around the foundation and to his old farm, which he had given to the foundation last year. We planned a special Easter service at the little chapel. It was a beautiful Easter morning. 3 different parties donated flowers. We used all white Easter lilies, white carnations, and white caladioli. 2 white candles were also on the altar. The chapel was filled with patients, staff, and guests. The president and his 2 cousins were accompanied by 3 Secret Service men. Mr. Roosevelt entered in a small wheelchair and sat in the pew in front of the 3 Secret Service men. Everyone in the chapel was very much aware of his presence, but no one turned around or stared. The service started forward as a gesture of kneeling. We were sure everyone in the chapel was moved as we were, and immediately bowed their heads in prayer for him. He was wearing a gray suit which seemed to accentuate his pallor. He participated in the entire service, responsive readings, songs, and prayers. He was unusually nervous throughout the service and dropped the hymn book on his glasses at different times. He stared straight ahead the entire time and did not smile or speak to anyone on entering or leaving the chapel, which is most unusual. The special music for the service was by a choir composed of patients, and a solo by his old friend and former patient, Mr. Fred Botts. Little did we know this would be the last time he would worship in a church. After reading over this first page, it seems to insinuate that we realized the seriousness of his condition. We definitely did not. We understand now that the doctors here were worried about him, and when he was here in November and December, his doctor took his blood pressure and used a stethoscope before and after he entered the pool. We realized he would be making frequent trips here to rest because the telephone people spent 3 weeks before his arrival laying underground cables and making everything permanent. He could talk to any spot in the world from here. He had been told he would not spend any more winters in the north. No formal dinner was being planned. We probably would have had a luncheon. He was always concerned about patients' activities. I had planned a real black-faced minstrel to begin while they were here. We started to work on it after the party arrived. On Monday of this week, Grace Tilley and Major Greer stopped me and said, "The boss would like to have a request performance of the minstrel on Thursday, April 12th at 5:30 p.m. I said of course we would be happy to do it for him. Gee, the patients and those who were helping me certainly worked hard. It had been planned for Friday the 13th. The Major and his Signal Corps men made a 2-tier stage for me and put up mics, 5 of them. It was an all-patient cast except for 3 specialty dancers from Atlanta and Graham Jackson, the coder pianist who is so talented and who played for the president 23 times since he has been in office. The costumes for the course were darling: white pants, pink shirts, green vests with large white buttons down the front, orange cardboard ties with black polka dots, white top hats with green bands and big white gloves with faces painted on them, and large white cuffs. I'll enclose a program. There was to be a barbecue for the president and his party at 4:30 given by Mr. Alcorn, mayor of Warm Springs, at his cabin on top of Pine Mountain. My Rada came by the playhouse to check on the chair the president was to sit in for the show and told us where to place it. Mike was to have a radio car out front, and as the president left the barbecue, they would radio us and we would all be ready. We had invited all the children patients, all children on the foundation, and all patients who had never seen him, and a few special guests to be at the request performance. I was making up the last member of the cast when Graham Jackson came running across the stage, all made up for the show, and whispered to me, tears rolling down his face, "Mr. Stevens, he's dead. The president is dead." I automatically said, "Hush, Graham." He said, "It's on the radio, NBC." I called Miss Irwin, the chief surgeon's wife and close friend of the president, who was helping me, and told her. She screamed. There was some noise, so only a few heard her. We rushed out as quietly as possible, and with the foundation accountant, began to verify the rumor. We immediately realized there were no Secret Servicemen outside the playhouse, which meant something was wrong. I went back to tell Betty, who was at the door, to continue to seat people, and what we had heard. Then I went backstage to finish up with the makeup. The cast wasn't aware of anything. By 5:15, only about 5 minutes later, they were back and without any words. I knew. His chair was in the middle of the aisle. The playhouse was full. I knew we must handle the situation carefully and in the dignified manner. My, what a responsibility. There happened to be a Methodist minister from Manchester, a Reverend Mize, in the audience. I sent for him. I made the announcement to the black-faced patient cast, and the tears began to roll down the grease paint on their faces. He was their friend. Every one of them knew it too. Next, I had two people draw the curtains made of old sheets with black faces painted on them, and the minister and I stood before a large group of people who wondered why the leather chair had been moved from its place. It took everything I had to make the announcement. I said, "It is with a great deal of sympathy and regret on the part of the cast and the entire foundation family that I made the announcement. The President of the United States of America is dead. He died at 3:35 p.m. If you will stand, you will have a minute of silent prayer, and Reverend Mize will close the prayer." My, a shock. And what could you do? We got the patient's makeup off and went up to the hall. The whole world knew it before we at Warm Springs did, since Mr. Hassett released it to the White House correspondents immediately. The night of the 12th was a long one. We went by the cottage the secretaries were staying in to see if there's anything we could do. They were a most pathetic group. They were very close to him. We made sure of the time the train was to leave Friday so that we could have the patients at the hall. It was traditional that he always stopped at the hall on the way to the train. I failed to tell you that Graham always brings the president red American beauties in the Frigidaire. The American Beauty roses were probably the first flowers to reach the little lighthouse. Captain Ford of the 4th Service Command, who also helped us with the show, took them up. The train was supposed to leave at 8 o'clock, so everyone was up very early. There was so much going on all night, but no noise. 3,000 soldiers and 2,000 paratroopers, to say nothing of the generals and admirals, arrived doing in that. Miss Roosevelt and Admiral McIntyre, the president's personal physician, flew down from Washington during the night. The mournful sound of the black draped bass drum led the soldiers to their places at the little White House, where the procession started. All patients and staff were at Georgia Hall the first thing in the morning of Friday the 13th. You will see them in the newsreels and newspapers. Several bands led the procession, and after those were thousands of armed soldiers in battle dress, each man with a grave countenance. The black drums and the crape on the American flag were all symbolical, and then the dark green hearse bearing that great man's worn-out body. The pallbearers were young men representing each branch of the armed services. The honor guard followed, all on foot. Miss Roosevelt and Admiral McIntyre followed in a car, and Miss Tully, Mr. Hassett, other secretaries, and the Secret Service men behind them. The hardest moment was when the hearse stopped in front of Georgia Hall by the patients, just as always. Only he didn't lift his hat and smile this time. The colored musician, in the uniform of a chief petty officer of the Navy, played Going Home very softly on the accordion. There wasn't a dry eye. Even Graham's lips trembled, and his eyes were closed as the tears streamed down his black face. At the flagpole, with the flag at half-mast, the hearse also stopped for newsreels and newspapers. We got into the car then and joined the procession to the train. Starting at the gates of the foundation, there was an avenue of OCS men and paratroopers lining the road on both sides, all the way to the train. They were about 4 feet apart and stood at attention with their guns. At the train, the flag-draped casket was taken up a ramp and lifted into his car. As the band played softly and servicemen saluted, others bowed their heads. His special train silently and slowly left the place he established for the last time. All of us felt that a personal friend had left us, never to return again. Before leaving, all members of the President's party expressed a wish that we would have the show we had planned on Friday night and dedicated to him. It would be his wish, they insisted. So after discussing it with every doctor and the higher officials and the cast, we decided if that was what he would want, the show would go on. It would have been easier to do anything but a minstrel, and I was very much afraid they couldn't make a go of it. We revised the script, and I made this statement before the curtain was drawn. Our show tonight, instead of being a request performance, will be a dedication to the spirit of the leader who made Georgia's Warm Springs Foundation mean what it does to you and me. In the opinion of those who knew him best, it would be his wish that we carry on with the precedent he established. And so now, with your help, we will carry on, courageously, smiling. The show was perfect. It was hard to do, but everyone was so glad they had done it. We spent all day yesterday planning a memorial service and decorating the chapel. The service was held at the same time the funeral was conducted at his other home, Hyde Park. There were no outsiders, just patients, staff, and those who knew him well, because we purposely kept the time from the public. It was just a sincere Warm Springs Foundation memorial service to our Commander-in-Chief, our President, our founder, and a great humanitarian. The altar was decked with white carnations and 2 varieties of wild dogwood grown near the little White House. The chapel couldn't hold everyone who wished to attend. Some were at windows and doors. I will enclose one of the programs. The anthem by the choir was the same one they did Easter Sunday for him. Dr. Huntington is a polio. He was president of Roberts Collies in Turkey when he took polio. Miss Plastridge, who made a short statement, was one of his physicians. Dr. Irwin is the chief surgeon here and a personal friend. The president has been in his home, and Dr. Irwin has been in both White Houses. He gave the most touching remarks of all. He is a large, handsome doctor, and his eyes were full of tears. He would bite his lips and hesitate between sentences. When he finished and took his seat, he cried. A doctor, a surgeon, and the man that he is, being so moved because of the loss of a friend, was hard. The patients here dearly loved Dr. Irwin. Mr. Botts, the other speaker, was the first patient here, and another fine individual who personally feels the loss of this great man. The entire service was lovely and left us with the feeling that all of us would do our best to carry out to the best of our ability our individual jobs in order to carry on the great work which he started. Somehow, we feel we were privileged to be associated with this institution at the time we have been. The place naturally means a great deal to us, and more so now after these experiences. He certainly loved this place. He has $1 million life insurance policy given to him by Ethel Ford and made payable to Georgia Warm Springs Foundation. The little White House where he died will in all probability become a national shrine. And probably the foundation will be set up as a memorial to him. Very few people know that on Tuesday, April 10th, he went up to what is known as the Knob, a high point on Pine Mountain, where we often go on picnics, and there he spent 2 hours alone. Of course, Secret Service men were in the woods, but he was alone and very close to God. The Knob is just that kind of place. You wonder what his thoughts were, and if he had any premonition of what was to come. How we hope his plans can be carried out and a lasting peace established. Then his great sacrifice will not have been in vain. Betty and I have composed and typed this letter together here at the President's Pool this afternoon, the afternoon of his burial. We hope it has given you a clear picture of the now historical events which occurred here these last 2 weeks. We are both pretty tired, physically and mentally. Tomorrow is Betty's day off, so we're going to Atlanta to try to relax. We will each write personally in the near future. A fitting conclusion to this letter, we believe, are Mike Riley's words. None of us will ever live long enough to know just how great a man he really was. Much love, Hazel and Betty. I want to give my heartfelt thanks to the Harrison family of Dothan, Alabama, for trusting me with this letter and allowing it to be shared for the very first time. Preserving voices like this keeps our history alive in all its light and shadow. If you'd like to explore more stories like this and discover the Southern noir novels that history has helped inspire, I invite you to visit me at pelhampugh.com. Thank you for joining me here at the Little White House. Until next time, this has been American Shadows.